When the lawyer finished reading Mom's will at her funeral, my sister Bethany was practically glowing. $15 million, the family mansion, all the jewelry. Everything went to her. I got nothing except a small envelope with my name on it. Bethany smirked as I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was just a single key and an address I had never seen before. But when I drove to that address 3 days later, I discovered something that would destroy everything Bethany thought she knew about our family forever. Before we dive into this incredible story about family secrets and ultimate justice, I would love to know where you are watching from. Are you Team Justice or Team Forgiveness when it comes to family betrayal? Hit that like button if you believe karma always finds a way, and do not forget to subscribe, because this story has twists that will leave you speechless. Trust me, you will want to see how this family drama unfolds. My name is Serafina, and for 28 years I believed I was the disappointing daughter. While my sister Bethany excelled at everything, Harvard MBA, successful marketing firm, designer clothes, I struggled through community college and worked as a bookkeeper for small businesses. Mom never let me forget the difference between us. Bethany has always been special, Mom would say during family dinners. She has that drive, that business sense. Some people are just born with it. The implication was clear. I was not one of those people. Growing up, I watched Bethany receive the best of everything. Private tutors, expensive summer camps, a brand new BMW for her 16th birthday, while I got a used bicycle. When she graduated from Harvard, Mom threw a lavish party at the country club. When I finally finished my associate degree at 25, Mom sent a text message saying, "Congratulations." The favoritism was so blatant that even Bethany seemed uncomfortable sometimes. "Mom, maybe Sarah could use some help with college too," she had suggested once when I was 19 and struggling to pay tuition. But Mom just laughed. "Serafina needs to learn the value of hard work. Besides, not everyone is cut out for higher education." After Mom's cancer diagnosis last year, I moved back home to help care for her. Bethany visited twice during the entire 8 months of Mom's illness, both times for less than 24 hours. She was too busy with important clients to spend time with our dying mother. I quit my job, gave up my apartment, and became Mom's full-time caregiver. During those long nights when Mom could not sleep, she would sometimes get nostalgic. "I made so many mistakes, Serafina," she whispered once. "So many things I should have done differently." But when I asked what she meant, she would just pat my hand and change the subject. The funeral was a small affair. Mom had outlived most of her friends, and our extended family was scattered. Bethany arrived in a black designer suit that probably cost more than I made in 3 months. She spent the service checking her phone and left immediately after for a crucial business meeting. The will reading was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Bethany flew in from New York, clearly annoyed at having to take time away from her company. We sat in the mahogany-paneled office of Hartwell Briggs and Associates, the law firm that had handled Mom's affairs for decades. Mr. Hartwell, a distinguished man in his 70s, cleared his throat and began reading. The first part was standard legal language, but then came the specifics that made my blood run cold. "To my daughter Bethany Morrison, I leave the family home at 12 Oak Tree Lane, valued at approximately $2.7 million. I also leave her my investment portfolio currently valued at $12.3 million, as well as all jewelry, artwork, and personal effects." Bethany's smile was radiant. She actually clasped her hands together like she was receiving an award. "To my daughter Serafina Morrison." Mr. Hartwell paused, and I braced myself for some small token, maybe a few $1,000s, or Mom's old car. "I leave one item, only the contents of safety deposit box number 479 at First National Bank, along with this key and instruction letter." He handed me an envelope. That was it. 28 years of being the devoted daughter, 8 months of sacrificing everything to care for her, and I got a safety deposit box. Bethany could barely contain her glee as we left the office. Oh, Sarah, I am so sorry, she said in a voice dripping with false sympathy. But honestly, what did you expect? Mom always said I was the responsible one. Maybe there is some jewelry in that box or something. That night alone in my tiny rental apartment, I stared at the key in the sealed envelope. Mom's handwriting on the outside simply said, "For Serafina, open only after reading the will." My hands shook as I tore it open. "My dearest Serafina," the letter began. "If you are reading this, then the will has been read, and Bethany believes she has inherited everything. She has not. The address below belongs to a storage facility, Unit number 203. Inside that unit, you will find the truth about our family, about Bethany, and about why I had to protect you all these years. Take the documents to Detective Morris at the police department. He has been waiting for this evidence for a very long time. I am sorry for the pain this will cause, but some secrets destroy families if they stay hidden. All my love, Mom." My heart pounded as I read the address. It was across town in an industrial area I rarely visited. The letter continued. "Bethany has been stealing from her clients for years using falsified investment reports and embezzling funds. But more than that, she has been using my name and social security number to hide the stolen money. Every dollar she claims to have earned through her business success was actually stolen from elderly clients who trusted her. I discovered this 6 months ago when Detective Morris contacted me. They have been building a case, but they needed proof of where she hid the money. I found it, Serafina. I found everything." I read the letter 3 times before the words truly sank in. My sister, the golden child, the successful businesswoman, was a thief. And somehow, she had been using our mother's identity to hide her crimes. The next morning, I drove to the storage facility with sweaty palms and a racing heart. Unit 203 was larger than I expected. When I rolled up the metal door, I gasped. The space was filled with filing cabinets, boxes of documents, and computer equipment. On top of the nearest box was another note in Mom's handwriting: "Start with the red folder." The red folder contained bank statements, investment records, and client files that made my stomach turn. Bethany had been systematically stealing from her clients, mostly elderly people who had trusted her to manage their retirement funds. She would show them fake statements indicating healthy returns while actually moving their money into accounts she controlled. But the most shocking discovery was in the blue folder copies of official documents showing that Bethany had been using Mom's social security number and identity to open accounts and hide the stolen money. She had made Mom an unwitting accomplice to massive fraud. As I sat on the floor of that storage unit surrounded by evidence of my sister's crimes, I finally understood why Mom had always seemed so distant, so worried. She had spent the last months of her life uncovering the truth about her perfect daughter while trying to protect me from the fallout. The inheritance Bethany was celebrating was built entirely on stolen money. Detective Morris was exactly what I expected a veteran fraud investigator to look like: tired eyes, coffee-stained tie, and a desk buried under case files. When I called him about Mom's letter, he asked me to come in immediately. "I have been waiting for this call for 8 months," he said, as I sat across from his cluttered desk. "Your mother contacted us when she discovered what Bethany was doing. We have been building a case, but we needed the financial records she promised to find." I spread the contents of the red folder across his desk. Detective Morris whistled low as he examined the bank statements and forged documents. "This is even worse than we suspected. Your sister was not just embezzling from clients. She was running a sophisticated identity theft operation using your mother's information." He pulled out a thick file labeled "Morris and Bethany, Financial Fraud Investigation." "We have complaints from 17 different clients, all elderly people who trusted Bethany to manage their retirement savings. She would show them falsified statements indicating their investments were growing while actually transferring their money into accounts she controlled." My hands trembled as I looked through the victim statements. Margaret Sullivan, 83, lost her entire life savings of $400,000. Robert Kim, 79, lost his veteran's disability settlement. These were not wealthy people. They were retirees who had saved their entire lives only to have it stolen by my sister. But how does Mom fit into this? I asked, though I was beginning to understand. Detective Morris leaned back in his chair. Your sister needed a way to hide the money trail. She used your mother's social security number to open multiple accounts and credit lines. On paper, it looks like your mother was the one moving money around and making investments. If we had not known better, your mother could have been charged as an accomplice. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Not only had Bethany been stealing from vulnerable people, but she had been setting up our mother to take the fall if she got caught. Your mother was terrified, Detective Morris continued. She came to us 6 months ago when she discovered fraudulent accounts in her name. She was desperate to clear herself and stop Bethany, but she needed proof of where the money was hidden. She spent her final months gathering this evidence while undergoing cancer treatment. I thought about all those times Mom seemed distracted and worried during her illness. I had assumed she was just scared about dying, but she had been carrying the weight of discovering her daughter's betrayal while fighting for her own life. What happens now? I asked. Now we move fast. Your sister does not know we have this evidence yet. Tomorrow morning we execute search warrants on her apartment office and all the accounts listed in these documents. I need you to act normal until then. Can you do that? Acting normal felt impossible, but I nodded. Detective Morris handed me his card. If Bethany contacts you or seems suspicious about anything, call me immediately. She is dangerous, Serafina. People who commit this level of fraud do not stop at financial crimes. That evening my phone rang. Bethany's name flashed on the screen and my stomach dropped. Sarah, I have been thinking about you all day, she said in her practiced, cheerful voice. I know yesterday was hard with the will reading and everything. I was wondering if you wanted to have dinner tomorrow night. Maybe we could go through some of Mom's things together. I forced my voice to stay steady. That sounds nice, Bethany. Where do you want to meet? How about that little Italian place Mom loved, Rossini's 7 o'clock? After I hung up, I immediately called Detective Morris. She wants to meet me for dinner tomorrow night. Is that safe? Actually, that is perfect, he said. We will execute the warrants tomorrow morning. By dinner time, she will be in custody. But Serafina, if anything feels wrong before then, get somewhere public and call 911. I barely slept that night. Every sound in my apartment building made me jump. I kept thinking about the elderly victims in Detective Morris's files and how Mom must have felt discovering that her perfect daughter was a predator. The next morning, I forced myself to go through my normal routine: coffee, shower, a walk around the neighborhood. At 10:30, my phone rang. It is done, Detective Morris said. We arrested Bethany at her office 2 hours ago. The search turned up even more evidence than we expected. She had been planning to flee the country. What do you mean, We found airline tickets to the Cayman Islands dated for next week, along with documents for a new identity. She was going to disappear with the stolen money and leave your mother holding the bag posthumously. The full scope of Bethany's plan was staggering. She had not just been stealing money. She had been orchestrating an escape that would have destroyed Mom's reputation and legacy forever. There is something else, Detective Morris continued. We found communications between Bethany and someone at the bank where your mother did her banking. It looks like she had inside help accessing your mother's accounts and personal information. That afternoon, the local news ran the story. Prominent financial advisor arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. They showed footage of Bethany being led out of her office in handcuffs, her perfectly styled hair falling in her face. My phone started ringing immediately. Neighbors, old family friends, people I had not talked to in years, all calling to express shock and ask if I had known. But the call that surprised me most came from Margaret Sullivan, one of Bethany's victims. I saw the news, the elderly woman said. I wanted to thank you for coming forward. That woman destroyed my retirement, but at least now I know I was not foolish for trusting her. She was very convincing. As I listened to Margaret's story, I realized that Bethany's victims were not just names in a police file. They were real people whose lives had been devastated by my sister's greed. That evening, instead of meeting Bethany at Rossini's, I sat in my apartment watching the news coverage of her arrest. The reporters called it one of the largest identity theft and embezzlement cases in the state's history. The stolen amount had grown to over $20 million. But what haunted me most was not the money or even the victims, though their suffering was real and devastating. What kept me awake was the realization that I had never really known my sister at all. The person I had envied and felt inferior to my entire life was a calculating criminal who had been willing to destroy our mother's legacy to save herself. Mom's letter had promised the truth would be painful, but she had been wrong about one thing. This truth was not just painful, it was shattering everything I thought I knew about my family. The media attention following Bethany's arrest was overwhelming. Within 48 hours, our family's private tragedy became public entertainment. News vans parked outside the house where I grew up, reporters called constantly, and social media exploded with commentary from people who had never met any of us. But the attention also brought unexpected allies. 3 days after the arrest, I received a call from Jennifer Walsh, an attorney specializing in financial fraud recovery. "Miss Morrison, I represent several of your sister's victims," she said during our first meeting at her downtown office. "We are filing civil suits to recover the stolen money, but we need your help." Jennifer was sharp professional and genuinely angry about what had happened to her clients. "Your sister destroyed people's lives," she said, spreading victim statements across her conference table. "Margaret Sullivan is now living in a studio apartment because she lost her house. Robert Kim cannot afford his medications. These people trusted Bethany with their life savings." I studied the faces in the victim photographs Jennifer showed me. They looked like anyone's grandparents, kind, trusting, vulnerable. The weight of Bethany's crimes felt heavier seeing their faces. "How can I help?" I asked. "We need access to your mother's records. Based on the evidence Detective Morris shared, your mother was trying to trace where Bethany hid the money before she died. If we can recover those assets, we can return at least some of the stolen funds to the victims." That afternoon, Jennifer and I returned to the storage unit together. As we went through box after box of documents, a clearer picture emerged of Mom's final months. She had been conducting her own investigation while undergoing chemotherapy, following money trails, and documenting Bethany's crimes with meticulous detail. In one box, we found a journal Mom had kept during her investigation. Her handwriting grew shakier as the entries progressed, reflecting her declining health, but her determination never wavered. March 15th. One entry read, "Found another account in my name at Regional Bank. Bethany transferred $2 million there last month. How did I not know she had access to my social security number? How long has this been going on?" April 3rd, spoke with Detective Morris today. He says they need more evidence before they can arrest her. She is so smart, so careful. But she made one mistake. She trusted that I would never find out. April 22nd. The cancer is spreading faster than expected. I may not live to see justice, but I will make sure Serafina has everything she needs to stop this. Bethany cannot be allowed to destroy more lives. Reading Mom's words, I finally understood the distance I had felt from her during her illness. She had been fighting two battles, one against cancer and another to protect innocent people from her own daughter. The stress must have been unbearable. Jennifer photographed every page of the journal. "This is incredibly valuable evidence," she said. "Your mother documented everything with legal precision. She knew exactly what we would need to build a case." As we worked, Jennifer shared more details about the investigation. "The FBI is now involved because the fraud crossed state lines. Bethany was taking money from clients in multiple states and hiding it in offshore accounts. This is much bigger than we initially realized." She also told me about Dr. Elizabeth Hartley, a forensic accountant who had been tracking financial fraud cases for over 20 years. "Dr. Hartley reached out after seeing the news coverage," Jennifer explained. "She thinks she can help us trace the offshore accounts Bethany used to hide the money." Our first meeting with Dr. Hartley took place the following week at Jennifer's office. Dr. Hartley was a small woman with graying hair and intense eyes who spoke about financial crimes with the passion of someone on a personal mission. I have been following patterns of identity theft and financial fraud for years, she explained. What your sister did, using your mother's identity to hide stolen money, is becoming increasingly common, but she made several crucial mistakes. Dr. Hartley spread out a complex chart showing money transfers between dozens of accounts. Financial criminals always think they are smarter than they are. They create elaborate schemes to hide money trails, but they leave digital footprints everywhere. She pointed to specific transactions highlighted in red. Your sister was moving large amounts of money through a series of accounts, but she used the same IP address and computer for all the transactions. We can trace everything back to her. The collaboration between Jennifer Dr. Hartley and Detective Morris was inspiring to watch. They worked with a shared sense of urgency and justice that gave me hope for the first time since the arrest. But our alliance faced its first major challenge when Bethany's defense attorney, an expensive lawyer named Richard Blackstone, began fighting back aggressively. He filed motions to suppress evidence, claimed the search warrants were illegal, and worst of all, he started suggesting that Mom had been the real mastermind behind the fraud. Miss Morrison, he said during a deposition I was required to attend, is it not possible that your mother orchestrated this entire scheme, and your sister was merely following her instructions? The suggestion was so outrageous that I could barely respond. Jennifer jumped in immediately. That is completely baseless speculation, and you know it. But Blackstone was not finished. We have evidence that the elderly woman was experiencing cognitive decline during her final months. Perhaps she was confused about the financial transactions she was authorizing. I wanted to scream. Mom had been sharp and lucid until the very end, despite her physical illness. The idea that she would steal from elderly people and then frame Bethany was not just wrong, it was evil. After the deposition, Jennifer and I sat in her car in the parking garage, both emotionally drained. He is going to try to destroy your mother's reputation to save your sister, Jennifer said. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Mom's journal entries, her determination to protect Bethany's victims even while fighting cancer. My mother spent her last months gathering evidence to stop Bethany and help her victims, I said. I will not let anyone turn her into the villain of this story. That evening I called Dr. Hartley with an idea that had been forming in my mind. Is there any way to prove when the fraudulent accounts were opened and who actually controlled them? Absolutely, she said. Digital forensics can show us exactly when accounts were created, what devices were used, and even location data. Why do you ask? Because I want to prove beyond any doubt that my mother was a victim, not an accomplice. And I think I know how to do it. The next phase of our investigation would require going deeper into the technical evidence than we had before. Dr. Hartley explained that she could trace not just money movements, but also the digital signatures that would prove who was actually controlling the fraudulent accounts. This kind of analysis takes time, she warned. But if your mother was truly innocent, the evidence will prove it conclusively. As our alliance grew stronger, I began to feel something I had not experienced in years, a sense of purpose. For the first time in my life, I was not living in Bethany's shadow. I was fighting for something that mattered, justice for Mom and for the innocent people Bethany had victimized. But I had no idea that our growing success was about to attract the attention of someone who would threaten everything we were working toward. The alliance that felt so strong was about to face a test that would reveal not everyone fighting beside us could be trusted. The betrayal, when it came, would be more devastating than anything Bethany had done, because it would come from someone we had learned to depend on completely. 3 weeks into our investigation, Dr. Hartley called an emergency meeting. Her voice on the phone sounded strained, almost frightened. We need to talk immediately. Something has gone very wrong. Jennifer and I rushed to Dr. Hartley's office, where we found her pacing behind her desk with papers scattered everywhere. Her usually calm demeanor had been replaced by obvious distress. The offshore accounts, she began without preamble. Someone has been moving money out of them, large transfers happening over the past 48 hours. Millions of dollars are disappearing. My heart sank. But Bethany is in jail. How is that possible? Dr. Hartley's expression was grim. Someone else had access to those accounts. Someone who knew about our investigation and acted before we could freeze the assets. Jennifer grabbed the transfer records Dr. Hartley handed her. These transactions are too sophisticated for a random accomplice. Whoever is doing this understands our investigation methods and is staying one step ahead of us. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Someone close to our case was working against us. Over the next few days, the situation deteriorated rapidly. Evidence files began disappearing from the police department. Key witnesses changed their statements. Most disturbing of all, several victims received phone calls warning them not to cooperate with the investigation. Detective Morris called me on a Thursday evening, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "We have a leak somewhere, Serafina. Someone is feeding information to the defense team and helping them undermine our case. Who has access to all our evidence?" I asked, though I was beginning to fear the answer. "That is the problem. Too many people. The FBI agents, the prosecutor's office, our legal team, the forensic accountants." He trailed off, and I could hear him thinking through the possibilities. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Margaret Sullivan called me directly, bypassing all our official channels. "Miss Morrison, I received a very strange phone call yesterday," she said. "A woman claiming to be from your legal team told me that I should consider dropping my lawsuit because the evidence against your sister was fabricated." "What woman did she give you her name?" "She said her name was Dr. Elizabeth Hartley." My blood ran cold. Dr. Hartley had been with Jennifer and me that entire day. She could not have made any such phone call. I immediately called Jennifer, who was equally shocked. "Elizabeth would never tell a victim to drop their case. Something is very wrong here." We arranged to meet Dr. Hartley the next morning without telling her about Margaret's call. When we arrived at her office, we found her destroying documents. "Elizabeth, what are you doing?" Jennifer demanded. "Doctor." Hartley looked up with an expression I had never seen before, cold and calculating. "I am cleaning up loose ends," she said calmly. "This investigation has gone far enough." The truth came pouring out in a torrent of justifications and rationalizations. Dr. Hartley had been working with Bethany's defense attorney from the beginning, feeding him information about our investigation in exchange for a substantial payment. "You do not understand how this works," she said as Jennifer called the police. "These cases never result in full recovery for the victims anyway. At least this way, some of us benefit from the situation." But her betrayal went deeper than just information sharing. Dr. Hartley had been actively sabotaging our efforts to trace the offshore money, providing false analysis that sent us looking in the wrong directions, while she helped move the real assets to accounts beyond our reach. "How much did they pay you?" I asked, unable to hide my disgust. "Doctor?" Hartley smiled coldly. "Enough to retire comfortably. Your sister was very generous with other people's money." As the police arrested Dr. Hartley, I felt a crushing sense of defeat. 3 weeks of intensive work, all the hope we had built for recovering the victim's money, all of it had been compromised by someone we trusted completely. Jennifer was devastated. She had access to everything: our strategy, our evidence, our witness list. How do we recover from this? That afternoon, Detective Morris called with more bad news. Dr. Hartley was not working alone. We found communications between her and someone in the prosecutor's office. This conspiracy goes deeper than we thought. The betrayal had exposed our entire investigation to Bethany's defense team. They knew our strategy, our evidence, and our weaknesses. Worse, Dr. Hartley's false forensic reports had contaminated our case to the point where some evidence might not be admissible in court. "Can we still win?" I asked Detective Morris during an emergency meeting. He was honest in his assessment. "It will be much harder now. Dr. Hartley did serious damage to our financial analysis. Without solid proof of where the money went, we might not be able to prove the full scope of the fraud." That night, I sat in my apartment reading Mom's journal again, searching for something we might have missed. Her words seemed to reach across time. Bethany cannot be allowed to destroy more lives. But how could we stop her when our own allies had betrayed us? How could we fight a system where the people meant to protect victims were actively working against them? The phone rang, interrupting my despair. The caller ID showed a number I did not recognize. Miss Morrison, this is Thomas Brennan. I am a forensic accountant with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. I have been following your case, and I think I can help. I was immediately suspicious. After Dr. Hartley's betrayal, I could not trust anyone claiming to be on our side. How do I know you are who you say you are? I asked. Because I worked with your mother before she died, he said quietly. She contacted the FBI directly when she first discovered what Bethany was doing. She was worried that local law enforcement might not have the resources to handle such a complex case. He arranged to meet me the next day at the FBI field office where I could verify his credentials. When I told Jennifer about the call, she was cautiously optimistic. If your mother was working with the FBI separately, there might be evidence that Dr. Hartley never saw, she said. Evidence that has not been compromised. As I prepared for the meeting with Agent Brennan, I felt a flicker of hope for the first time since Dr. Hartley's arrest. Maybe Mom had anticipated the possibility of betrayal and had protected some information from our compromised investigation. But I also knew that this was likely our last chance. If Agent Brennan could not help us recover from Dr. Hartley's sabotage, Bethany might escape justice entirely, and her victims would never see their money again. The fight was far from over, but we had learned a painful lesson about trust and betrayal that would change how we approached the final phase of our battle for justice. Agent Thomas Brennan was nothing like Dr. Hartley. Where she had been flashy and self-promoting, he was quietly professional. His FBI office was sparse and organized with case files stacked in precise piles and a computer screen showing financial data that meant nothing to me but seemed to fascinate him. Your mother was remarkable, he said as we sat down. She contacted us 4 months before her death because she suspected that Bethany's crimes were larger than local authorities could handle. She was right. He pulled out a thick file marked Morrison Investigation, FBI. Your mother provided us with information that Dr. Hartley never had access to. She was conducting 2 parallel investigations, one with local police and one with us. Jennifer leaned forward. What kind of information? Agent Brennan opened the file to reveal documents I had never seen before. Your mother discovered that Bethany was not just stealing from her individual clients. She was part of a larger network of financial advisors running coordinated fraud schemes across multiple states. He showed us a chart connecting Bethany to 4 other financial advisors in different cities, all using similar methods to steal from elderly clients. They were sharing victim lists, money laundering techniques, and false documentation. This is organized crime, not just individual fraud. The scope was staggering. Instead of the $20 million we thought Bethany had stolen, the network had taken over $60 million from hundreds of victims across the country. But here is the crucial part, Agent Brennan continued. Your mother figured out how to trace the real money trail. She discovered that all the stolen funds were being funneled through a single offshore bank in the Bahamas, controlled by someone calling himself Marcus Webb. He pulled up banking records on his computer. Marcus Webb is actually Dr. Elizabeth Hartley. She was not just helping your sister, she was running the entire operation. Bethany was middle management in Hartley's criminal enterprise. Jennifer and I stared at each other in shock. Dr. Hartley had not been bribed to help Bethany's defense. She had been protecting her own criminal empire. That explains how she knew exactly how to sabotage our investigation, I said. She was not just betraying us, she was protecting herself. Agent Brennan nodded. Your mother's final journal entries document her discovery of this connection. She realized that arresting just Bethany would never recover the victim's money because the real criminal was someone else entirely. He showed us Mom's handwritten notes from her last week alive. Her writing was barely legible, but her message was clear. E. Hartley is Marcus Webb. She runs everything. Bank records and safety deposit box prove it. There is another safety deposit box, I asked. Box number 741 at Merchants Bank, Agent Brennan confirmed. Your mother opened it 2 weeks before she died and left instructions for us to access it only after Hartley revealed herself. The next morning, Jennifer, Agent Brennan, and I met at Merchants Bank. The safety deposit box was small but contained devastating evidence, original bank documents showing Dr. Hartley opening accounts under the Marcus Webb identity, photographs of her meeting with other members of the fraud network, and most importantly, complete records of where all the stolen money was actually hidden. Your mother was dying, but she outsmarted a criminal mastermind, Agent Brennan said with genuine admiration. She knew Hartley would eventually try to sabotage any investigation, so she gathered evidence that Hartley did not know existed. The FBI moved quickly with this new evidence. Within 72 hours, they had arrested 3 other financial advisors in the network and frozen accounts containing over $45 million in recovered funds. But the most satisfying moment came when Agent Brennan called me with an update on Dr. Hartley herself. She made a critical mistake when she betrayed your investigation, he said. She thought she was protecting herself, but she actually exposed her entire operation. When she started moving money out of the accounts you were tracking, she used her real digital signatures instead of the Marcus Webb identity. We caught her red-handed. Dr. Hartley was arrested at the airport, trying to flee to a non-extradition country with $2 million in cash. The woman who had presented herself as a crusader for justice was revealed to be one of the most sophisticated financial criminals the FBI had ever encountered. With Dr. Hartley in custody and her network dismantled, our case against Bethany became much stronger. Agent Brennan explained that Bethany would now face federal charges as part of a criminal conspiracy which carried much heavier penalties than the state fraud charges. Your sister will likely spend the next 20 to 30 years in federal prison, he said, and we have recovered enough assets to return at least 70% of the stolen money to victims. I called Margaret Sullivan personally to give her the news. We found your money, I told her. You should have most of it back within 6 months. She cried on the phone. I thought I would die poor because I was foolish enough to trust that woman. Thank you for not giving up on us. Similar calls to other victims produced the same emotional responses. Robert Kim would be able to afford his medications again. Eleanor Torres could keep her house. Families that had been destroyed by Bethany and Hartley's greed would be made whole. But perhaps the most meaningful validation came from an unexpected source. Detective Morris called me after reviewing all the evidence Mom had gathered. Your mother was not just protecting you and the victims, he said. She was conducting one of the most thorough criminal investigations I have ever seen. She should have been a detective herself. As I processed everything we had learned, I realized that Mom's distance during her final months had not been about cancer or family dynamics. She had been fighting the most important battle of her life, a battle to protect innocent people from sophisticated criminals who preyed on trust and vulnerability. The woman I had thought was disappointed in me had actually been protecting me while conducting a federal investigation that would ultimately save hundreds of families from financial ruin. Jennifer and I celebrated that evening with quiet satisfaction rather than champagne and fanfare. Your mother planned this entire operation, she said. She anticipated every obstacle, including Hartley's betrayal, and left us exactly what we needed to win. But even as we savored the victory, I knew the final phase of this battle was still ahead. Bethany's trial was scheduled to begin in 2 months, and her high-powered legal team would not surrender easily. They would try every trick to minimize her sentence and blame others for her crimes. The truth was on our side now, but we still had to convince a jury that justice demanded the harshest possible consequences for someone who had built a career on exploiting trust and destroying lives. Bethany's federal trial began on a cold Monday morning in October. I sat in the front row of the courtroom, flanked by Jennifer and 3 of Bethany's victims who had traveled from across the country to see justice served. The woman sitting at the defense table bore little resemblance to the polished, confident sister I had grown up envying. Bethany's designer clothes had been replaced by a simple gray suit, Her perfect hair was pulled back severely, and her face showed the strain of 8 months in federal custody. When our eyes met across the courtroom, I saw something I had never seen in Bethany's expression before: genuine fear. For the first time in her life, she could not charm, manipulate, or buy her way out of consequences. The prosecution's case was devastating. Agent Brennan presented evidence that Bethany had stolen over $12 million personally while participating in a criminal network that had taken $60 million total. Mom's meticulous documentation proved that Bethany had used her identity not just to hide money, but to make Mom appear complicit in the crimes. The defendant did not just steal money, the prosecutor told the jury. She was willing to destroy her own mother's reputation and legacy to save herself. She used a dying woman's trust as a weapon against innocent victims. But the most powerful testimony came from the victims themselves. Margaret Sullivan, now 84, walked slowly to the witness stand and spoke directly to the jury. "I trusted Bethany Morrison with my life savings because she seemed so professional, so caring," Margaret said. "She visited my home, met my grandchildren, attended my husband's funeral. She made herself part of my family so I would trust her with everything I had worked my entire life to save." The defense attorney tried to argue that Bethany was just following Dr. Hartley's instructions, that she was another victim of the criminal mastermind. But Agent Brennan's testimony demolished that strategy. "Miss Morrison was not a victim," he said firmly. "She was a willing and enthusiastic participant who recruited her own clients for the scheme. She personally falsified investment reports and lied directly to elderly victims about their financial security." The trial lasted 3 weeks, but the jury deliberated for only 4 hours. When they returned with guilty verdicts on all charges, including money laundering, elder abuse, and identity theft, Bethany collapsed in her chair. The judge scheduled sentencing for the following month, but privately told the prosecutor that Bethany was facing 35 to 40 years in federal prison. After the verdict, I stood outside the courthouse with Margaret Sullivan and the other victims. For the first time in over a year, they looked peaceful rather than anxious. "Your mother saved us all," Margaret told me. "Without her investigation, we never would have gotten our money back or seen justice." But the conclusion of Bethany's legal troubles was only the beginning of my own transformation. With the criminal case resolved, I had to decide what to do with the rest of my life. The answer came from Jennifer, who offered me a position with her law firm specializing in financial fraud recovery. "You have natural instincts for this work," she said, "and you understand what victims go through because you have been there yourself." I accepted immediately. Over the past year, I had discovered a passion for helping people who had been betrayed and exploited by those they trusted. Working with fraud victims felt like continuing Mom's mission to protect innocent people from predators. Agent Brennan also became an unexpected mentor, teaching me about financial crime investigation and helping me understand the complex ways criminals exploit trust and vulnerability. "Your mother would be proud," he told me after I successfully helped recover stolen funds for my first independent case. "She started something important when she decided to fight back against these criminals." 6 months after Bethany's sentencing, I received a letter from her in prison. The handwriting was shaky, nothing like the confident script she had once used to sign fraudulent documents. "Sarah," the letter began, "I know you will probably never forgive me and I do not deserve forgiveness. But I need you to know that I never intended for Mom to get hurt. I thought I could control everything, keep her separate from what I was doing. I was wrong about so many things." She went on to apologize to the victims and to acknowledge that she had spent years living a lie. The money, the success, the respect, none of it was real. I was terrified that people would discover I was not as smart or capable as they thought, so I started cutting corners, then taking shortcuts, then outright stealing. By the time I realized how far I had fallen, I was in too deep to stop. I never responded to the letter, but I kept it. Not out of forgiveness, but as a reminder that even the people we think we know best can be hiding devastating secrets. Today, 2 years after that shocking will, reading my life looks completely different than I ever imagined. I work with victims of financial fraud, helping them navigate the complex process of recovery and justice. I have a job that feels meaningful, colleagues who respect my work, and the knowledge that I am carrying on Mom's mission. More importantly, I have built a chosen family with the people who stood by me during the darkest period of my life. Jennifer has become like a sister to me, the kind of sister I thought I had in Bethany but never actually did. Margaret Sullivan and I exchanged letters regularly, and she has become a beloved grandmother figure in my life. The victims I work with have taught me that family is not just about blood relationships or shared genetics. Family is about the people who support you, protect you, and fight alongside you when everything falls apart. I think about Mom often, especially when I am working late on a difficult case. I understand now why she seemed so distant during her final months. She was not disappointed in me. She was protecting me from a truth that would have been devastating to learn while she was still alive to see my reaction. Her gift to me was not just the evidence needed to stop Bethany and help the victims. Her real gift was showing me that I was stronger and more capable than I had ever believed. She trusted me to carry out her mission when she could not. And that trust changed everything about how I see myself. Looking back, I realized that the inheritance I thought I had been denied was actually the most valuable thing Mom could have given me: the truth, the tools to fight for justice, and the knowledge that I was worthy of her trust and confidence. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted completely was living a double life? Have you experienced the kind of family betrayal that changes everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes sharing these experiences helps us all heal and move forward. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories about family secrets, justice, and the complicated relationships that shape our lives. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that even the most devastating betrayals can lead to growth, purpose, and the discovery of what really matters in life. Thank you for taking this journey with me, and remember, sometimes the family we choose becomes more important than the family we were born into. Justice may take time, but it does find a way, especially when we have the courage to fight for what is right.